These were my parents, Howie and Laurel. They were amazing. They are beautiful people. I really won the lottery when it comes to parents. I say that all the time. I'm becoming a broken record, but it's because I mean it.
They were both 57 at the time. My mother was already in treatment for breast cancer for the 3rd time, and my father had just been diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, which was crazy. They were in treatment together, and our life kind of flipped upside down.
Nancy Borowick is a photographer and author of the book, The Family Imprint, a daughter's portrait of love and loss.
The story is about my family. Originally, it was a photo essay that I had done about my parents, who were both in treatment for cancer at the same time, and I was photographing them. But actually, the book is sort of a larger story about my family because they didn't want to be defined by their diseases. I was photographing my parents, because I didn't really know what else to do. I'm a photographer, it's how I see the world, and I wanted to spend more time with them, and I didn't know how much time we had left. So it just sort of happened organically, and it was amazing because I was photographing them in treatment, but then very quickly I realized that the story that I was shooting and the story that I was living wasn't really about the cancer. It was about living, kind of in contrast to death and cancer and mortality. It was about life and joy, and that was how my parents were dealing with this reality.
And I look back and I remember such meaningful and important and profound moments that I shared with my parents. And some were silly and some were, sad and complicated, but they were all these moments that make up our whole experience.
Nancy's mother was diagnosed with cancer in 1997 at the age of 42. 12 years later, the cancer was back.
So she was back in treatment, and about a year later, she was in remission. About a year after that, scans came back that the cancer had returned and was metastatic, and it was everywhere. About a year after that, so fast forward December 2012, my father was having back pain and went to the hospital to have a scan done, and they discovered pancreatic cancer. Because my mother was already in treatment, it was really kind of quick and seamless that my father went into treatment. But they were fighters, and obviously it's difficult having two parents sick and dying, but at least they had each other and they could understand what the other was going through. That's that silver lining, right? They had chemo like every week, every other week. They had doctor's appointments, and I was around, obviously I was photographing, but I wanted to be an advocate for them. I wanted to help them. They were busy taking care of each other, and I wanted to make sure someone was taking care of them. And I realized just how important my camera was, because it was providing me this distance, I think a physical distance, but also this, this other kind of distance from the reality of what was happening in front of me. And that reinforced the importance to me, my need to have my camera with me all the time.
I love this moment because, she's in her element. She's being silly. This is like her Madonna from the 1980s. But the expression on her face to me just speaks to her thoughtfulness and how she can kind of look back on her life, and she's not angry anymore and she's not scared. She's just sort of present and living. I remember the moment my father told us he had pancreatic cancer and realizing that, he's sick and she's sick and like, what is happening with my world? My husband and I kind of looked at each other and I was like, I always pictured my parents at my wedding. And he said, okay, let's do it. So we got engaged.
Unbeknownst to me, my parents skipped a week of chemo before my wedding. They wanted to have energy and they wanted to be able to enjoy the celebration. And the wedding was, something to look forward to, and it was a distraction. And, we didn't know if they were going to make it to the wedding, but they did. The wedding was kind of a gift for all of us to be able to celebrate one last time together. My dad said to me, Nance, this is like probably our last hurrah. And I remember in that moment I was like, no, like don't say that, but I think he knew. About 2 weeks after the wedding, he was jaundiced, and that was sort of the beginning of the end. But we had a lot of really important conversations in that time. I guess it's true, like you're able to have this perspective at the end of, maybe when you're facing the end of your life, about the experiences that you've had, and he was very open and shared with us. But he was getting weaker.
Recently, I looked at this image and I thought, you remove the tubes and the machines and the wires, and he could be at the beach without a care in the world. And that kind of brings me comfort. I feel like he had come to terms with this, and that was important for me as his daughter, as one of his caregivers, to notice that if he was okay with this, I had to, learn to be okay with this. We sat down and I had a camera on him, and he wanted to tell his story to me. And one of the questions I asked him was, do you ever wonder what people will say about you at your funeral? And he said,
well, you don't have to guess about that, because I've written a letter. It's in the desk. It's in my desk, top drawer. It says, don't open unless I've checked out. And it's a letter to the crowd.
My father was a character, and he was always the loudest in the room. He was always the center of attention. So it surprised no one that he wrote his own eulogy. It was 14 pages long in all capital letters, which was so him, even though I told him that when you write in capital letters, it seems like you're screaming at people, but.
Come his funeral, I remember taking this picture and asking my mom, like, why are you smiling? And she said, I look around at this room and we are surrounded by so much love and so many people who cared about Dad and so many people who made up the story of his life. So how lucky are we that they're all here?
Soon, Laurel Borowick's health took a turn for the worse.
It was surprising because she had been sick for so long, we kind of just thought she'd be sick forever. I don't know, she just seemed to live with it and continue living. So when she started to take a turn and struggle, and ultimately the decision was home hospice, it was really shocking. I took far less photographs in that time, and now I look back and realize that maybe that's because I was starting to feel the distance, or maybe I was distancing myself from what was happening, because suddenly I lost my father and now I was losing my mother. And then December 6th, 2014, a day shy of the 1-year anniversary of my father's death, my mother passed away.
Hello.
Who's that?
Hello. Say hi. I'm really a smiler, but right now I'm kind of shy.
What?
So I'm loving you. The happiest existence in the whole world.
And the reality is, like, when you've experienced loss, you have to move forward. You have to keep going. That's what my parents would have wanted. My mom even said before she died, you know, you decide on Shiva. I know tradition is 7 days, but you decide what's best for you. If you need a day off, you get a day off, you know, and which was so her, to be thinking of others before herself. She was a very selfless, loving person. And I would take my parents back in a second, but because of the circumstances, and I can't, I get to now maybe spend the rest of my life with this understanding of how fragile it is, and make decisions, you know, not like, as my mom, you know, advised me, to not let fear stop me from living my life. And I try to remind myself that kind of on a daily basis. I look back and I think, you know, some people get 100 years with their family and they don't have the kind of relationships that I had in the 28 years with my dad and 29 with my mom. So how can I complain? Like, I got real lucky.